Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We've got a fun episode for you because today we're going to be talking about decentralized finance, DeFi, and some of the regulation that has recently come to light around DeFi and some of the changes that are happening in this massively growing sector of the blockchain and distributed ledger landscape as well. And I'm joined by some outstanding co-hosts and cast of characters from the VCTV family. We've got a fun show for you, but before we do introductions, a big thank you to the LaToken team, to Hasmik and Maria for making today's episode possible as always. With that, let's go ahead and introduce our outstanding members of the VCTV family. Adrian, kick us off with a little intro and background for everybody.
Thank you, Kyle, for the invitation. Hello, everybody. Very happy to be again in the VCTV LaToken metaverse. So we can coin this metaverse, okay, Kyle?
I love it.
I'm Adrian Niculescu, serial entrepreneur and investor. I'm involved in a few projects, CloudCoin Consortium. CloudCoin is a post-blockchain digital currency, and CloudCoin Finance, a DeFi project, both with blockchain and post-blockchain technology. DAO1, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, and Ventures, a Singapore-based venture capital firm. And also I'm building CoinCruncher as a news and education portal for everything blockchain. We have a great topic today. We could speak for days. Happy to be here again and contribute.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today as well. Irfan, welcome back. It's always a pleasure. A little intro and background for everybody.
Thanks, Kyle. Thank you so much, and glad to be in this room with all other friends over here. My name is Irfan. Right now, I'm leading a DeFi fund. We specifically focus in the DeFi sector. So we are a $50 million fund. Essentially, our the focus area that we look into is the added technical support, mainly in the security, the smart contract auditing, as well as ecosystem building. Very exciting space. I have been in the deep tech industry for at least 10 years and in the investment side for about 5 years. So glad to be here. Excited to discuss, about a topic. Like Adrian said, we could speak for 3 days, but we'll keep it short and sweet. Back to you, Kyle. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Irfan. Gary, last but not least, Grand Master of Artificial Intelligence. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Quick intro.
Yeah, great to be here, Kyle. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've done 17 companies involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Yva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. Love artificial intelligence and quantum, as Kyle said. I'm the co-founder, president, and CEO of GSD Venture Studios. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, and as we see with DeFi, with the digital transformation of the world, that's becoming a reality very quickly. And, Kyle, I've written a paper about technology as a tool for peace that I'm going to be presenting as part of a panel at the United Nations on October 1st, my second presentation at the UN. I believe that some of the things we're going to talk about today and some of the tools that are out there, smart contracts, et cetera, is what's needed to really democratize the world, because we have a lot of challenges that's in front of each and every one of us. And we need to step up, each of us, to those challenges in order to make this world a better place and a survivable place now.
Right. And decentralized finance is playing a big role, as all three of you alluded to in your introductions today. I mean, we went from, May 2020, we saw just under $1 billion in total value locked amongst applications and protocols within the decentralized finance space. Today, just now I'm checking, we're over $90 billion here, and it's our high. We were just under $100 billion. So you put in a few other protocols, we're at almost $150 billion locked away of value in the world of decentralized finance. That's not a small number. And a lot of things have also sparked up in the recent weeks as decentralized finance is starting to pick up on a global scale as well, right? We've got conversations around regulation in the United States. We also have some of that in Europe. We have some of that in Latin America. We also have some of that in China. It's in Asia as a whole. Everywhere is looking at how decentralized finance as a whole, as an industry, will affect traditional, as we knew it, finance. And that can go everywhere from gaming in an industry to health to how we generate income and revenue for ourselves. There's so much that encompasses us. Irfan, if you can, running this new DeFi fund, congratulations, by the way. As you're seeing the different companies out there and making investments or getting that geared up, what are you seeing the landscape of decentralized finance looking like today, as we've seen, again, this rapid progression in the last 3 months? Paint us a picture of where we're at before we jump into regulation.
Thanks, Kyle. And yeah, I mean, again, this is very, very, quickly developing into a space, beyond, and it's touching in almost all sectors. Every day you are hearing, different solutions that are coming out and then addressing different areas, particularly, obviously, for me, it was of, major interest essentially in the emerging markets, and the application that it brings in. And there are developments happening very recently, with the crisis happening in Afghanistan. There was an article that came out in a bunch of major news media about this folk called the Crypto Afghan. And he was essentially the bridge between the crypto world and the absolutely disconnected world, which is not connected to a lot of the global system. And considering all these surges that were happening, was a clear indication how an industry such as DeFi can make massive differences. So for us right now, we're looking into, this is really the wild west, but at the same time the capabilities are massive. So our specific area, apart from obviously into the more traditional ones, we're looking into ratings, more in the DeFi spaces, financing, as you mentioned, essentially microfinancing, as well as healthcare, global healthcare, which is a very interesting space. So obviously, we prefer those spaces because it makes massive impact in developing world where probably systems are not even in place, and it makes sense. So that's where we are looking at. And obviously you earmark a very important sector. To be active in this space, you gotta be very swift and flexible around the regulatory space, because it can become very, very tricky. So which is why you need funds to have more forward-facing approach in terms of the regulatory spaces. And we've seen a lot of things happening in that space. So happy to jump into that, but back to you, Kyle.
Yeah. I want to jump actually right into it. The regulatory environment, especially in the United States, has dramatically shifted or changed, or is still kind of in this gray area as things are kind of being fleshed out. I saw that we have a few companies now that their high interest yield programs and services are potentially considered a security. There's still not clarity yet as to what is not a security in the world that is decentralized finance. We got NFTs, non-fungible tokens, that are starting to play a bigger role beyond the collectibles and moments that we saw, and actually expanding into new mechanisms of fundraising and ownership. And in some cases, we've talked about real estate and mobility, retail, supply chain. All of these different industries are playing a role in this. When you look at DeFi from an enterprise standpoint and how invoices may or may not be getting paid, and you bring stable coins into this, everything is just, it's all happening really fast. So in the United States, we have the infrastructure bill that was put through. The SEC had some say into what they felt or was not felt around decentralized finance and how it should be looked at going forward. But Irfan, why don't you kind of start us off, and then Gary, I want to come to you, and Adrian. Where are we from a regulatory perspective around decentralized finance? While it's a gray area, what have you kind of seen or heard around this area to kind of point, especially as an investor? Because investing in companies in DeFi, we have to be thinking about that. And so maybe what are some of those areas you're looking for a company to grow into regulation if it exists?
Right. No, thank you, Kyle. I think you painted the picture very well. I mean, obviously, U.S. Sort of like took a back step, and and again, the complexity of it is massive. I wouldn't say that there is a back step in terms of the amount of effort that's being given in, because obviously, with new products coming out every day, it is very important to understand it. And really, today, not only in the DeFi space, macro level understanding isn't enough. You're talking about technical understanding, you're talking about micro level involvement, and also multiple jurisdictions. So in our case, we just made our job even harder, but we like it. So we are operating in more, our portfolio distributions that we are targeting is more in the emerging market, which means that, and in places like, where it became even more sort of gray, especially like in India and other parts of Southeast Asia. China plays a big part in that. So I think the key aspect of it is to, like you mentioned, so if we are operating with a real estate company in a portfolio and a DeFi real estate solution, I think the number one factor that we're trying to look at is that at the end of the day, if it's real estate, doesn't matter whether it's coming to the DeFi space, etc. You still have a tangible asset, an asset that it's fixed, that's in real life. We still didn't really transfer to the Tron world yet. So by stating that, we need to be we need to comply with the models that particular countries as well as their systems are in place. So I think that the key is what we are having is conversation and trying to have the portfolios tend to address the basic requirements that are required by any other real estate operators in those space. So I think these are like the basics, but then again, the complexity comes in that if you now fractionalize that asset into an NFT, what would that mean, and how would that be traded? Because certain countries have, restrictions in terms of what you can sell out of the country. So I mean, this is just a glimpse of the complexity in the regulatory space, but it's not undoable because it creates a massive opportunity for both economy as well as the global economy. So I believe, and I'm strongly in favor of this, that governments as well as key enterprise players as well as investment organization are all right now taking that step, working together to make these things happen. And that's all I can say, but happy to answer any questions you may have. But back to you, Kyle, and would love to hear Gary more.
Yeah, Gary, why don't you chime in as well? Anything to add on this regulatory environment, especially as you're writing this new article and paper as well for the UN?
Yeah. So I mean, part of the challenge that we have is, we're right on target. There's multiple jurisdictions, multiple rules and regulations, some accepted and not. But at the very top of this thing is education, because I'm not sure. Sometimes the people making the decisions are the last ones that understand what's really happening in the environment. In my opinion, if they don't do it, nothing good's going to happen to that particular country or region. So it's something that has to happen. You're right. The emerging markets are really hot because we didn't have those infrastructural challenges like we have in other parts of the rest of the world. And they're more easily able to adopt the change. So the emerging markets are a good place to focus. But I mean, in order for this world to continue to survive with all the challenges that we have with global warming, with food supplies by 2050 needing to double, and at the same time not having enough, you can't double the amount of farm animals. There's just a lot of challenges. We can overcome it, but we need education. The legislators, the regulators need to be educated. And, as we talk about tangible products, Irfan mentioned, tangible products, things like real estate, it's a little easier. When you talk about NFTs and other ways of doing it, it's a little bit more difficult for some people to accept. So education's a key right now. But listen, the countries and regions that aren't on the bus on this are going to lose because it's moving very, very quickly.
very quickly, very quickly, as we've explained. And Adrian, would love to get your points on this as well.
Things are moving quickly, but somehow we were expected to a higher adoption in DeFi, and if for the centralized finance systems, they are usually either national or international, focused on few territories and following a very strict regulatory framework. Usually the DeFi platforms and the DeFi as a whole is international. There are very few restrictions, and also very few to none regulatory systems to protect the users first. And one of the huge drawbacks in adoption of DeFi is still the lack of security, which was not solved. It's like every week there is a new hack, or every 2 weeks, a small or a high one. And many people are losing trust, of course, in the whole idea. And this has to be solved. No matter how good is the APY or how low it is, the most important thing is to have the principle protected, right? So you could enjoy the benefits and to make some informal choices, and to be able to develop your financial IQ as a users. So until this problem will be solved, which is first a technical one, and second related to the whole DeFi paradigm, we will anyway round in circles, even if in theory the value of the market is growing, but still is small comparing to what centralized financial system mean overall.
Couldn't agree more. And then also, I want to switch gears to a few big announcements that came this week and last. We had today PayPal opening up buy, sell, and hold abilities for the United Kingdom customers, so they can buy Bitcoin, Ether, and others. We had few other announcements earlier this week in a similar fashion. We also had El Salvador last week open up Bitcoin as a legal tender within the country. We had Panama that followed as introducing their crypto law, and then we had the Ukraine introducing similar to that of El Salvador, and a few other countries looking at it now as well. How does this change the game of DeFi and regulation as we start to see more countries getting involved in this from a governmental level and not just enterprises alone? Irfan, you want to kick us off?
No, thank you. Thanks, Scott. Great points that you just brought in front. And, before I go, I just want to pick up one thing from Adrian, what he mentioned. And I think that's the key in the DeFi space also, and which is why we also focusing in that, which is security. Like if you look into the security smart contract aspect of it, I mean, if you tend to, trust the system, and if you're looking at it, at least most of them tend to focus on the major ones, and which tends to dictate pretty much the backend protocol of most of them, unless you want to try something out of the ordinary, and it has to be tested, because if it's not, security is a huge drawback. Also, it's a strength, it's a drawback, and that needs to be understood. Secondly, the other aspect of it that lines with it is that you have to connect the virtual world with the real world, and I think ecosystem plays a big part in this, and which is why it comes back to, again, these countries. Now obviously these are positive steps, and you have had a lot of activity, like Ukraine has been leading in terms of a lot of blockchain developments that's been happening for a while. And you have a lot of blockchain developers from there, so it made sense for Ukraine to sort of like jump in. Now, the question is, obviously, in places like Ukraine, El Salvador, Panama, things are happening. I mean, we've heard, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Marshall Islands also did something to create like a stable currency or something like that prior to that. But I think as long as like the leaders And specifically when I say leaders, at least G14 members, if they're not taking active participation in creating a task team, to make sure that things happen, very swiftly, understanding and have an industry-wide approach, things are still out there. I think again, it's the security feature, is the anonymity, and and the other aspects of it that plays also weighs into the part of certain national government trying to weigh in. So it's complicated, but it will be getting somewhere, because at the end of the day, the technology makes sense. And like Gary said, I mean, you have many applications of this. So yeah, back to you, Kyle.
Yeah, Gary, back to you on a similar question. I mean, how does this all impact? I mean, with El Salvador, you're going to talk to the UN. I mean, I'm sure this is part of your conversation. What does this all impact the future of finance and looking at decentralized finance as leading that role?
Well, I mean, this is one of many, Kyle, because, we look at the challenges that we have. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and we talk about technology as a tool. I spoke at the UN as augmented reality, virtual reality is a tool to combat violent extremism and terrorism. And I thought to myself, and right after that, I read some more about global warming, Ida hit, about the food supply by 2050, not enough food, about 250 to 300 years, we may not be able to live on the planet. We could go extinct. And it's, now it sounds like a wild fantasy, but these kind of things are becoming real quickly. Look at the oceans. So what I see is that we need to cooperate and work together. And DeFi gives us a chance to really level the playing field to be able to do things differently. What does it mean for places like Ukraine and Panama to come on board? It shows that there's hope. There's this ability for this to work, and that the larger governments to come in. The problem is you got politicus, you got ultra high net worth individuals, sometimes their influence in the central banks that have a lot of power. And so are they willing to give it up to make the world a better place? Well, if they don't do it, and we don't start working together, nothing good's going to happen. But I got to tell you, Kyle, going down through this in detail and really refocusing ourselves on some of these emerging markets like Africa, Latin America, India, where there's an opportunity to be able to put a dent. Now, of course, India right now may not be the right place, but there are places in Africa that are. And as we said, Ukraine and Panama. So what we need to do is we need to understand that these technologies level the playing field, makes it easier for us to do business, easier us to do trade, and smoothly to be able to. So if I'm in a little village in Africa, and I want to do something with some type of an opportunity, an entirely different country, I can do that. Look at what's happened with StreamYard in 2018, developed in Vancouver, Canada, for this digital transformation, Zoom. So we've now come to a point where these technologies are starting to impact us. Are we going to be willing to accept them or not? Do we understand? It's going to happen over time, whether we like it or not. It will happen. It's just when. Is it next year, the year after? Are they going to keep the walls up in a sense and not let us do it for 5 years from now? But it's going to happen. We need to do it. Our population is going from 8 to 13 billion by the end of this century. We need to learn how to work together. It's not about a select few that have money. It's about the good of all of us. How can we make the planet a better place to live?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. Adrian, anything to add?
Just few short ideas. So besides the security, which is not solved, another two drawbacks for DeFi adoption are the lack of translation for blockchain to the real people. And I want here to bring into attention what happened in El Salvador. So the government was smart there, and they said, okay, the remittance company, they earn like $400 million a year. So why not putting the Bitcoin in the system, putting some ATMs in United States create the Chivo application and enable transactions without fees. But look at the protests happening these days on the streets in El Salvador, because people don't understand Bitcoin, don't understand why Bitcoin is volatile, and are not ready mentally to cope with the volatility of Bitcoin. So that's why Bitcoin, blockchain, DeFi, they need to be translated to the regular people, put it in the terms everybody can understand and can digest. And of course, what we are doing now is part of the process. And this is very, very important. And of course, in anything related to regulations, the governments, they have the primary role. They should be the kickstarts on starting something, on doing something. And the example of El Salvador is a very good one. And the government there actually was very brave starting to implement that. So chapeau for them.
Very nice. Okay, gentlemen, in your closing thoughts as we come to wrap today, would love to know, as investors, what's getting you excited or where you're looking to place bets in the DeFi space. Knowing all that we just talked about, where are you looking, one or two categories, and then where can you be found online? Gary, let's start with you.
Yeah, so we're actually doing a lot of work all over the world. A lot of work in Africa with fintech companies. So interested in all kinds of fintech companies, DeFi companies, especially ones that are using artificial in some way, shape, or form, some interesting type of AI. Of course, smart contracts are very exciting for all of us. So this is a great opportunity. You can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn. You can catch me on Twitter. And if you get a chance, October 1st, I'll be speaking at the United Nations. There's invitations for that online. Check it out. Let's go out and let's all make a dent in the universe and make this a safe, happy, and healthy environment for everybody.
Absolutely. Adrian.
I can be found on LinkedIn. I answer to all messages. As a closing thought, I would advise anyone to dip the toes into DeFi, to start learning, to buy some coins, to stake them, to farm them, to test a few platforms, and to learn about it, because you can't ignore the future. It's like in few years, people who will not understand programming, will not understand DeFi, will not understand all these new technologies, and at least until like a medium level, will be like people who don't know how to read. It's such important. So it takes time, it takes persistence, but the time is passing anyway. So invest some time here. This is an advice. I'm putting it in front of everybody over and over. Of course, I can be considered a nasty guy saying that over and over, but hopefully it will help some people hearing that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adrian. Irfan, close us out. Areas of interest for you now running this new DeFi fund. Pardon me. And then where can everyone find you and the fund online?
Great. No, thanks. And glad speaking with everyone. Thanks to Gary and both of you. And the point is that so our focus area is essentially, again, right now we're looking into the finance, as insurance, credit ratings, etc. But obviously, we tend to add a little bit more elements, especially in the emerging market. I just want to pick up one final point that Adrian just mentioned, and Gary also sort of resonated, which is education, right? Education is key to this, and education in this space. I mean, I know that I'm pretty technically sound, and DeFi space is expanding so much. If you take your gas off the pedal, you find yourself outdated. So that's how crazy it is. But again, I want to reinforce the other thing is that how can this be translated? When I say translated, and this is exactly what Adrian was referring to, translate into social terms. You need to see this really happening. It's not like, oh, if you could buy a Tesla, with your Bitcoin or cryptos, etc. It really, you need to see that happen. And especially when you talk about emerging market, and El Salvador is an example, you need to see the process happening to the farmers there. You need to see, that guy, his family member who's working in somewhere in the Middle East, being able to send that money so that he can buy a home for his father. This is what I mean by the reality of how DeFi can socially translate and change that. And that needs to happen for people to understand and make sense. It's not the whole high jargons about it. It's the real life jargons that we're talking about that would make sense and enable everyone to open up. But kudos to the governments who are taking those steps. But really, if you want to see widespread, that needs to be translated towards the community and the people. And this is the community that has been empowering the blockchain ecosystem years and years. So thank you. Back to you, Kyle, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Yes, to everybody. Really appreciate all the thoughts and insights today around decentralized finance and the regulatory environment surrounding it as well. And to everyone tuning in, thank you so much. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe on today's episode. Also, please do reach out to each and every one of our investors, myself included. We'd love to hear what you're working on and continue the conversation with you. But please do add context where you heard us, where you met us, what you would like to continue the conversation about. With that being said, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday for more VCTV. Until then, a big thank you to the LaToken team, to Maria and Hasmik for making today's episode possible. Take care.